You are listening to the Fitz and Healthy podcast. I am your host, Dr. Lauren Fitzgerald, also known as Lauren Fitz. I'm a medical doctor, a fitness instructor, an entrepreneur, a health and fitness coach, but most importantly, I am a lover of life. And here on the Fitz and Healthy podcast, I intend to give you a ton of great information and knowledge that will serve as potential power so that you can live a life by design and make it more fits and healthy. And don't forget to listen to the disclaimer at the end. I'm not your doctor, yo. All right, enjoy the episode. Much love. Ciao. Hello and welcome to the Fitz and Healthy podcast. I am your host, Dr. Lauren Fitz, and today I have an extra special guest on the show today. Melissa McAllister, what is up?
Hey there, how are you?
Good. And of course, my lovely co-host, Cynthia from Cynthia.com. What's up, girl?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm the one. So usually on the podcast where I have someone that I'm interviewing, Cynthia is not going to be with us, right? But today, this is a special guest because as you guys will learn, Melissa is close to both mine and Cynthia's heart. And first of all, Melissa, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to be here on this Good Friday.
That's right.
Apparently it's gorgeous weather there in Texas and you are spending it inside talking to us and giving us your time. So I appreciate you greatly.
Anything for you guys.
So let me just give the people that are listening and watching on the YouTube channel kind of a quick and dirty history on how you and I are even connected.
Okay.
So rewind to about 2 years ago when I started really learning about nutrition and the realities of nutrition. I would read every book, listen to every audiobook, listen to any podcast that I could get my hands on that had to do with anything in that realm of health and nutrition. And one of the things that I came across was intermittent fasting. And it was something that, I have been associated with the fitness world, whether, it was my first job as an aerobics instructor when I was a teenager to, teaching my own class and then the YouTube channel and whatnot. So literally my whole adult life, I've been connected to it, yet I'd never heard of intermittent fasting. And when I started learning about it, I was just fascinated by this concept and how I'd never heard of it before. And so literally I got on my podcast app, search every single thing that I could find about intermittent fasting. And I found you and you were being interviewed by Chalene Johnson. How long ago was that interview, by the way?
I want to say maybe 3 years ago, coming on 3 years.
Okay. Because I knew that at the time I listened to it, I remember thinking, oh, this was not recorded anytime soon. It was a while back. So yeah, it's been a while, but listening to the interview that she did with you about intermittent fasting, one, I learned so much. The way in which you taught and spoke about it was made it easy for me to understand. And plus your personality, even though I could only hear you, like there was something about you that just, like attracts like, I think.
There you go.
And so I'm like, I like this girl. Like you can tell that by the way Chalene described you, you could tell that you were someone that was very well respected, had every reason that you could have been full of yourself and had a huge ego, yet all I heard was a humble, genuine, kind-hearted person that really did just want to help people. And that's why I was like, because usually when I listen to people, I don't follow them on social media, but your podcast with Chalene Johnson interviewing you, that was one I literally went and I'm like, hold up, pause. Okay, say that again. And I went and I found you and I started following you immediately. And obviously fell in love with just everything that you are. Now it's April 2017, and I consider you not only a mentor, but one of my closest friends.
Hey.
And you are responsible for inspiring thousands and thousands of people to get healthier and happier. And so I want to give the audience kind of, an idea of who I am interviewing. It's not just a friend. It's someone who is very, very well respected in the fitness world. You're known for a few things, right?
Right. I hope.
Tell me, and we're just going to talk fitness and health. Obviously, you're known for things outside of health and fitness, but let's just talk about your health and fitness. How many home DVDs, workout videos have you been in?
I quit counting, but a good guess is probably between 50 or 60.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. So your first workout video that you were ever in was what?
Yes. Was Turbo Kick, and it was volume 7, which was the best of. So it was a compilation of a bunch of different turbos. I remember that day very, very well.
And for those of you that don't follow Melissa online, we'll make sure that you find all the ways that you can find her and follow her. But Melissa is a self-proclaimed introvert, and so being on a workout DVD, I can only imagine, probably was a little scary for you, maybe?
Oh, just a little bit. Just a little bit.
Just a little. And you were with Shalene on that one, correct?
Yeah, she was standing right in front of me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. What year was that?
Shoot. It was probably 6 years ago.
Okay. And now you've lost count on how many workout DVDs.
Yeah.
And they range, they're not just all Turbo Kick.
Right.
Anyone that is a fan of the fitness format called PIO, Melissa. There's no way that you don't know Melissa. In fact, the very first PIO, I'm not sure if you remember, Melissa, because I sent you a text message, the very first PIO one I did, and I pressed play, and I'm like, oh. There's Melissa. I didn't realize.
Yeah.
I knew that you were known for your book and for your huge following on Instagram. So your celebrity status in the world of workout DVDs and whatnot, I had no clue. Really no clue. So okay. So tell me, first things first, your MAID diet.
Yes.
This is something that has transformed so many people's relationship with food. And while I do want to talk about intermittent fasting later in the podcast, I want to start off with the MAID diet. First of all, tell us what MAID stands for.
God, that I am acronym queen. Ever since I was in middle school, I had to make a speech or anything, I had to make an acronym out of it. So I've just always used acronyms to help me remember things and to help describe things. And so specifically for the MAID diet, it stands for moderate protein, adequate fat, decreased carbs, 8-hour window.
Awesome. What does it also mean outside of just the diet?
MAID.
Yes.
Because that's your brand. That's attached to everything. Melissa
MAID,
her team MAID. So yeah, what is MAID? Yeah.
Even Made in 8, which is an app that'll never get made. There we go again. See? But it started off back in the day when I opened my own fitness business that the show Made on MTV was really popular. And I would watch that show and I would see how these people would come in and take, the geek and make him head cheerleader, or take the band player and make him the head football coach. And I thought that's really cool. And it was called Made. So I just stuck with Melissa Made. And from there, it's followed me into Team Made, which stands for, my organization of coaches I have with me. And then when I decided to go, branch out into the nutrition line, Made is just stuck there as well.
It's perfect. And in your fitness business, making a difference every day is what MAID stands for there. And that just, it speaks to my heart, because that's exactly what you do on so many different levels. And
thank you.
And so So your passion for nutrition started out early. Am I right?
I did. That's what I went to college for. I went to Arizona State University because I loved how food affected the body. And, and I went through all of those courses, and I learned, back then about the food pyramid and the importance of low fat and high carb. Protein wasn't even mentioned back then. It was that, your diet needed to be carbohydrates. And I followed that. And I even wrote a blog recently. I remember my mother-in-law, right after I had my kids, she was trying to lose some weight, and she would get these bread rolls from the grocery store that were fat-free French bread rolls. And that's what she would have every day for lunch. And I followed suit. I was like, that's got to be how you lose weight, is to have a big piece of bread every day for lunch. And so through my own education and then watching what, the government and the media was telling me, that, I was a sucker for that as well. So that's the way I lived for most of my 20s with that, mind frame.
I'm just curious, because usually when you're young and on your way to college, your awareness of how food affects the body is not there. Was there something that happened in your life that made you passionate about that? No,
I've always followed the trends until here recently. But I always followed the trends. 20s, it was low fat. 30s, it was more paleo-esque. And then, here in my 40s, it's been more higher fat. But I have to admit that I was very intrigued and learned and researched and self-experimented on higher fat before it became a thing.
Yeah.
And now it's a thing.
Yeah, actually, in fact, I don't remember which episode, when I was talking to Cynthia, she was explaining how she met you, and it sounds like she was one of your experimenters.
I was a guinea pig for the MAID diet, and I still follow it to this day, though. So I mean, that was what, 2 years ago?
Oh yeah, yeah,
probably two and a half years ago. So. Yeah, I was her guinea pig for that. Gladly her guinea pig.
So tell us exactly what the MAID diet is.
Well, if I can backpedal just a little bit and tell you where the idea even came from was, I had done many cleanses, and a lot of cleanses are vegan and require a lot of vegetables and a lot of fruit and stuff like that. And so there was one time I decided to do it and to stick with the cleanse for 4 weeks. And it was, I'm not a grain girl, so I didn't do grains, and so that was out of the equation, but I just had a lot of fruits and vegetables for 4 weeks and felt great, but had my blood work done and was very interested in the results in that. And during the time of going through this cleanse, I picked my very first book I picked up was, Grain, I don't want to say it backwards, Grain Brain.
Yeah.
Grain Brain. And I read that while I was on this vegan diet, and my mind just blew up. And I thought, wow, okay, so I'm going to, since I've done this vegan for a month and I have blood work to show how it affected my body, I'm going to go high fat for a month and get my blood work done again and see what happens after the high fat, low carb for a month. And that's when I was convinced that for myself, and apparently a lot of other people, that my body just fared way better with a higher, healthy, high-fat diet as opposed to a more, would say, because all the fruit was raw, of course, and then I'd eat a lot of vegetables raw. The only vegetables I would have were at dinner, but everything else was raw. So, I mean, they were definitely two ends of the spectrum, and the blood work was just mind-blowing.
So tell us what the blood work was after the four weeks being non-high fat, and then
you're speaking Lauren's language right now.
Exactly. Speak medical to me, baby.
I totally should have brought the test with me.
Yeah.
But during the vegan, of course, my LDL went down, but my HDL went down dramatically as well, and my triglycerides went up. And then during the high fat, my LDL went up, my HDL went up, and my triglycerides went down tremendously. And I was concerned just like everybody else. And so when I saw the higher LDL, I went and had the particle size test done. And the particle size test showed that I had the large fluffy kind. So it was harmless LDL which even confirmed even more that my body was just responding really well to higher fat.
Absolutely. And you beat me to it. And this is one, as you know, we're both on the same bandwagon to get people to get out of the old mindset of total cholesterol and LDL versus HDL. Right. Those things are important, but the size of your LDL, the bad cholesterol, is what we want people to start asking for.
Right.
Getting people to get outside of that mindset is so challenging. So essentially, for all of the listeners, your blood work literally went in the direction that it should have, changing to the higher fat. Okay. So you saw for yourself your experiment, your N of 1, you're like, okay, I'm convinced.
Yes.
And then the idea for the Made Diet ebook.
Yes. Well, I just started diving into more research. I mean, I've been doing intermittent fasting research for a really long time, and the benefits of like not having grains and stuff like that, but specifically putting, having a large amount of fat in your diet was what I really started diving into. And then of course, here comes that little voice of Chalene in my ear again, saying you need to do a follow-up book from your 8-hour-ABS. And so I was like, I'm just so in love with higher fat living right now. So I decided to write the Made Diet and give it a little bit more girth. I mean, I purposely didn't make it complicated, but I did want it to have, a 70 meal plan. And I did want an explanation for all the questions that I was getting when I would tell people, you're really eating high fat. Doesn't it do this? Isn't this, what are all the, and I was like, okay. So then I wrote a book answering every single one of those questions, at the same time educating people on why putting more fat in your diet is actually really beneficial to your health.
So the 8-hour ab diet, not the 8-minute ab diet.
I wish.
Were we in the airport in LAX, Melissa? When I said, okay, quick story, side note, squirrel, sorry. But so Melissa and I went on a really cool trip together, and we were in the lounge at a layover. Not even a layover. We were waiting for a main flight to Dubai, and we did a plank off. We did it live on the YouTube channel, and we both decided to stop at 5 minutes. But as I was introducing her on the YouTube channel, I introduced her as the 8-minute abs. And she told me afterwards, she's like, it's 8-hour abs. I'm like, oh.
Everybody is like, what, 8-minute abs? Gotta find her.
To do crunches for 8 minutes? What?
I could sell that faster.
Right?
Yeah.
No, but in fact, the 8-hour abs, that's your first book that you did. And that's originally why Chalene Johnson was interviewing you on that original podcast that I listened to, correct?
Right.
So that deals with intermittent fasting. And so let's talk about intermittent fasting real fast, since we're on the topic. So when did this become something that you even started thinking about and reading about?
I'd never thought about it. I started teaching group exercise 18 years ago when I was one. When I was 1 year old. Dang. And because I always taught morning classes, I had more energy and felt better teaching on an empty stomach. And so I would come home, and then I would eat, which was usually around 11 a.m. And I had 2 small kids at home, and I would feed them around 6 or 7, and then I was done for the day. And so I'd done that for 18 plus years. And it wasn't until Chalene again asked me what I do differently than most people that keeps me so lean. And I was baffled. I'm like, I don't do anything. I don't work out that much. I don't eat that perfectly. And she's like, there's something that you're doing. And it finally came out that I don't eat breakfast. And it was something I think that I purposely kept to myself, because in the fitness industry, the most important meal of the day is breakfast. And it's so important for us to teach our participants to fuel our bodies before they exercise so that they don't lose muscle. But that's what I believed, because that's what they were telling me. And so I never, ever talked about it.
Isn't that so funny? And intermittent fasting, I think when I first started learning what it was, I realized that there were a ton of fitness professionals that were doing the exact same thing that you were doing.
Yeah.
They were essentially practicing, whether they realized it was intermittent fasting or not, but not telling it was against the grain
right.
of what. Yeah, exactly. Okay, now let me ask you this, because I have seen pictures of you when you were younger. Like your body, everything has changed about you in the last, I'm 15, 20 years. I just remember I saw a picture of you that it was years ago. I don't remember.
Stalker.
I'm a friend who follows you on Facebook.
Lurker.
So what changed between now and then? Because
honestly,
people go the opposite direction when
that's I don't kill the messenger, but I get better with age. And it's because I'm constantly learning. And like I said, in the 20s, I was a low-fat diet girl who lived in the gym. So I was in pretty good shape. In my 30s, I learned to adopt more of a lower carb diet, but it was more protein. And I lived a little less in the gym. So I was a little bit better in my 30s than I looked in my 20s. And now in my 40s, incorporated. Yeah,
girl. If you've never seen Melissa, so something that Melissa is known for is her abs.
Yeah.
And if you've never seen it, I'm going to plug you real quick. Go to her Instagram at Melissa Made and just take a gander. Yeah.
Will make me blush.
Yeah.
But it's the magic, and it's what I teach people, the magic of intermittent fasting, and carefully choosing your macros, and then the percentage of macros. And one of the biggest things that I have to combat with people is they'll come to me asking me about my keto diet. And I'm not keto. I keep joking, I need a shirt that says I'm not keto. I'm not
That's
keto.
like asking Lauren if she's a Zumba instructor.
Exactly.
I know you both hate that.
Yeah.
That's so true. That's funny. So true. So I really help people cater in the book. There's equations, really simple equations for people to figure out what works best for them. Because if you've got, a triathlete or a marathon runner, they're going to want a little bit more carbs in their lifestyle than someone who honestly sits in a cubicle all day and isn't interested in exercising. So it definitely helps break down your macros for what's best for you. But I don't really vary too much in fat, because I don't care who you are. You need ample fat in your diet and good, healthy fat.
Mm-hmm. So I think I know the answer to this, but why don't you tell the listeners, why are you not keto?
I think that it's a very difficult lifestyle to uphold. Being one who travels a lot, and life happens, and you have children that bring you cupcakes that they made themselves, or you get a birthday cake from family that I just think that to put yourself in that situation where you've got your carbs so low, I think it gives you an unhealthy relationship with food, really. If I were to say it out loud, I want you to have enough freedom to feel like you're not a slave to certain numbers. And I think any kind of diet that's too restrictive like that, you obsess about it too much.
And
it
ultimately,
should be low carb, not no carb.
Yeah. And ultimately, a lifestyle that's not sustainable for life is going to set you up for failure. And
right.
And I don't think granted, keto is still kind of new and trendy, I think right now. So it'll be interesting to see how many people get on this bandwagon and are able to stay on it long term.
Yeah.
Right. So let's talk about, what are your macros looking like on an average day?
For me, which I exercise about 30 to 40 minutes a day, 5 or 6 days a week. So I'm not crazy at the gym 2 hours a day. And
I think most people assume when they look at your body.
Right.
They automatically assume she lives at the gym because your body's rocking.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Pay you later.
Nope.
A lot of people, their face drops when they hear that I don't exercise near as much as they think I do, and the fact that I don't lift a lot of heavy weights. I I cater, and I usually start people at these same ratios because I think it's a good place to start for anybody. So I'm speaking about me, but if it's something you're like, I think I want to give this a try, it's a really good place to start. But 50% fat, about 35% protein, and about 15% carbs.
Okay. Now, are you a proponent of keeping track of that every day, or are you personally, your body and kind of how to stay around that percentage?
I think in the beginning, it's important because what happens is, and I talk about this in the MAID diet as well. I'm huge on just 3 meals a day. I don't want people snacking all day long for hormonal reasons. Mm-hmm. And so I want them eating 3 meals a day. And so if they're used to eating a high carbohydrate or even a high protein diet, that looks like so much food. And they'll see 3 meals and go, there's no way I can eat that in 3 meals. Well, if you're adding the healthy fat, which is olive oil and coconut oil and grass-fed butter to your meals, that doesn't take any room. So the meals are very satiating. They're a little bit smaller, but they're so satisfying for so long. So you had a question for me, but I went off. I heard grass-fed butter and I just...
Yes.
What were we talking about?
Do you stick to do you use
calculating your macros?
That's a great question. So I kind of, what I do when I work with people is I give them a very basic meal plan because I really want to see if their insulin if they're resistant or sensitive to insulin. And so by putting them on a meal plan that is really those ratios that I just said, then I can really tell by how their body reacts to that meal plan if they have resistance or sensitivity to insulin. But I certainly don't want people to care about calories so much. I just want them to fit it in 3 meals. And what I normally do is tell them to have breakfast that incorporates eggs and vegetables. And then I drink Shakeology for breakfast every day. Lunch is always a huge salad. There's no protein source in it, just a lot of healthy fat and vegetables. And then dinner is a portion of protein and vegetables again. So they really don't need to measure. They really don't need to count. As long as they keep that in their mind, it really is very close to 50, 35, 15.
And it's freeing. I mean, that to not have to worry about counting calories and counting this and counting that. It's just, for me, that sounds freeing.
Yes. Yeah. The first probably month that I did the MAID diet, I definitely tracked my macros. Now you could not pay me to do it. I don't care because I just listen to my body. So it's right. Definitely sustainable and you find your groove.
Right. And travelable. I mean, that's one of the things I always tell people is there's no place I can't go that I can't get eggs for breakfast. I can't get a good salad for lunch and I can't get meat and vegetables for dinner. Whether you go out to across the world, you will find that anywhere you go. So it's easy.
Yeah. In fact, we had this cute guy, this young kid from India, from Mumbai, Nadan, I think that was the way to say his name. Who when he saw us every single morning, he knew that we wanted an omelet with all of the vegetables. And there was one morning that Melissa didn't order it, and he came and brought one to her. He was like, forgot. It was pretty cute, but
yeah, that was a fun time too because he did that with the salad once too for dinner because he saw us always starting, and I didn't get the salad, and he brought it at the end of my meal, and I was stuffed. I sat there and tried to force myself to eat that salad because I didn't want to hurt his feelings. But
we took it to go and then threw it away later.
Yeah.
Truth be told.
True story.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of the misbeliefs or the beliefs in false truths like breakfast. So what are your biggest barriers that you find in a person that comes to you and wants help with their nutrition? I imagine, I know for me, the breakfast, getting past that breakfast actually isn't the most important meal of the day.
No, it can be, but it doesn't have to be first thing in the morning, right? So what I've learned that most people fear is that if they work out and they don't eat immediately, that they will lose muscle. And you hear especially in your shape magazines and your oxygen magazines, because they want you to buy a post-workout. And there's always an agenda behind that. But if you just think about the body stores fat for the very intention that if it needs energy, it's got a storage. So why on earth would it go for the muscle that it works so hard to build and retain instead of the fat that was put there to use for fuel? I just don't understand why people buy into that so much, knowing that your body is such an intelligent, multifaceted thing that it would actually break down your muscle before the fat. It's ludicrous.
Take them to church, girl. Take them to church. Amen on this Good Friday.
Right? No, but it's so true. But why would we believe that? Because it's been drilled in our head by every source possible, from the health magazines to the bro science, from our trainers, from the big muscle gyms and heck, our doctors. I mean, as a physician, I look back at all of the bad advice that I gave, but it was advice that I was taught, to give in med school.
Yeah.
Right.
And the concept of getting them to think outside, it will just think for themselves. Like, there's so much that I feel like I've learned, but it all goes back to what makes sense. Like what if our body, like, whether you believe in God or not, it was designed perfectly. And and like the whole, I love the fact that you talked about, 3 meals, and actually some people survive on 2 meals a day. It's kind of crazy.
Sure.
Getting past the idea that I don't have to eat 5 to 6 meals a day every 2 or 3 hours. Like, that's so time consuming. And again, it goes back to, that's not sustainable. You really can't expect to do that your entire life, the rest of your life. And then it just starts that cycle of just getting on this diet versus the next diet and that's the roller coaster. And it sets people up for not believing in themselves, thinking that they're always going to be overweight because they're on this diet roller coaster, and believing the nonsense of, if I don't eat, I'm going to slow down my metabolism.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's another big one.
Yeah, let's talk about that. When someone, because I know that you've heard that argument.
Yeah.
What do you tell them?
Well, again, you're hearing from the snack companies, the big food companies, that you need to eat every couple of hours or your metabolism will slow down, because they want you to buy the Fiber One bars. Sorry, Fiber One. But if you be told it, I mean, in fact, your metabolism actually raises a little bit in short-term fasting, because they want, because of your hormones, your adrenaline and stuff, because you are not eating. So your body needs to be ready and prepared and at its peak in order to go catch your dinner. And so, you actually have a faster metabolism. Now, there is obviously over a length of time, and I've read different stories. I've read 3 days and I've also read 7 days, but it takes that long for your body to go, oh, I really should start conserving energy. But until then, your body is primed and ready and going as strong as it can in a fasted state, keeping you at your peak. I mean, to go back to the muscle, around 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, your human growth hormone is at its highest, or when it really starts to produce, right? Because you have no more insulin in your body. Hopefully you didn't eat at 11 o'clock right before you went to bed. And you've had several hours of fasting. And so at that point, about 3 or 4 in the morning, when your insulin levels are null and void, is when growth hormone comes up, because they have an indirect relationship with one another. And you wake up in the morning and you actually fast for a couple more hours. It gives the opportunity for your human growth hormone to raise even more. And guess what? If you can exercise at the end of that fasted state, guess what happens? Your human growth hormone even goes up higher. And Dr. Lauren can tell you all day long the benefits of human growth hormone, how it keeps you young and it fights disease. And it's it's something that you want and you want a lot of. So why wouldn't you do what you could in order to take advantage of having that hormone in your system as long as possible? And by intermittently fasting in the morning and then exercising and then having your first nutritious meal of the day afterwards is just sheer magic for looking young, feeling great, staying lean, all the above.
So we're talking about hormones. Let's talk about the MAID diet and how it affects your hormones, because I know the answer, but I want you to explain to the people that are listening. They're like, okay, because I truly believe that us overlooking the role of our hormones in our nutrition and our day-to-day life is where a lot of people are missing out on their health and fitness journey. And the MAID diet specifically, I think, is super beneficial to get our hormones back where they need to be. And so can we talk about that?
Yeah, we have, I'll talk about 3, and if there's any other that you want me to talk about, but we have the 3 hormones. Insulin, which is your fat storing hormone. That's its job. You've got leptin, which is your satiety hormone, which tells you, hey, I ate something, I'm full, I feel great. And then you've got ghrelin, which is your hunger hormone, which is like, hey, you haven't fed me for a while, it's time for me to eat again. All 3 of those are important.
You know how I remember that? I think of gremlins, like they're the...
Yeah, no, for real. That's really what I think of. I think of like a little hungry, angry
ghrelin,
goblin.
Ghrelin, like your gremlin hormone. Like, you're hungry. Go eat. You're hungry.
No, literally.
I totally interrupted. Keep going.
No, I'm creating a great little cartoon visual myself.
Yeah.
He's kind of cute.
Yeah.
But what you said, Lauren, is so true about if you would just put your hormones first, then your body would look and feel its absolute best without a shadow of a doubt. If you wouldn't think weight loss, but instead you thought hormones, how do I get my hormones in balance? The weight would melt off of you. And you would be like, oh my gosh, I'm 20 years old again. But you have to change that mindset into take care of your body and your hormones and your gut. And then just the weight loss will happen automatically. I promise you it'll happen automatically, but people are shortchanging all of our hormones. And so, for instance, by eating the 6 meals a day, you're never allowing leptin and ghrelin to do their job. And you're constantly releasing insulin. And so your body is so confused. But if you do just the 3 meals, then guess what? Your body gets to go through the natural paces it's meant to do. You eat a good meal with lots of healthy fat. You've got your body saying, okay, stop eating. I'm nice and full. So for several hours, you're full and your body gets to do what it's supposed to do. And insulin levels will lower because, they'll go up a little bit, not much if you're not eating those processed carbs, but they will go up a little bit still. But then and you have a nice steady blood sugar level. And then you just start to notice, I'm a little hungry. And then let leptin do its job and tell you, guess what? You are legitimately hungry. You're not bored. It's not because of the commercial you watched. It's not the billboard on the freeway that's made you hungry. Your body is telling you, oh, I really need to eat. I'm low on fuel. And you eat again 3 times a day. And then let your body give your body 16 hours to go through all of the food that you've had during the day and give it several hours to go, oh, there's no fuel source here. Let's tap into the fat stores and use that for fuel instead. And it's a wonderful balance between all of those things put together.
Okay. So while we're talking about that, let's talk about carb burner versus fat burner.
Yeah. Yeah, and most of us are. I was guilty of that for decades. That my body wanted to burn sugar because it's easier for the body to burn sugar. But being married to a car guy, a great analogy is sugar is a diesel fuel. It's very dirty. It's gross. It doesn't clean. It leaves lots of residue, free radicals, in the burning process, as opposed to fat, which is a super ultra premium. You're going to pay a lot of money for fuel because it burns so cleanly and it leaves absolutely no residual afterwards. And so your body would prefer to use the fat for fuel. but because everything has sugar in it. It's not from the farm. It's got a lot of sugar in it. And so our body is just used to that sugar feed. And I'm sorry, but it's killing us that we're allowing our bodies to burn this dirty sugar as our fuel source. And so when you go from the process of burning sugar to burning fat, it's an uncomfortable time because your body is so used to that readily available crap, as opposed to the clean burning fuel. But it's so worth it if you just stick with it, and you feel so much better.
And it's funny how crappy you feel when you do try to introduce carbs back in.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Crappy.
It's a great reminder that you don't need them.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have a person that comes to you and says, okay, Melissa, I know I'm a sugar burner, but I want to become a fat burner. Where do I start?
Well, I think that's where, go. I think I'm a little bit different in that area because I know a lot of people will tell you that you have to be in ketosis where, there's high level of ketones in your system. And I'm just not sure that I agree with that because I think as long as you're eating clean and you're getting most of your carbohydrates from vegetables, that you still are a very high fat burning machine. So that's why I don't say no carbs or 5% of your calories coming from carbs, that you can have it a little bit higher because it depends on the kind of carbohydrates that you have.
Yeah.
And so the first thing I have them take out of their diet is, of course, processed carbs, grains, and root vegetables. I have a couple times a week. I love my sweet potatoes. But for the most part, it's, the green leafy vegetables that I think are your body I don't even think they notice them as a carb, even though they've got carbohydrates in them. They just see it as just the cleanest fuel for them to use to repair and build muscle tissue. So
do you practice carb cycling?
No. No, ma'am, I don't. Get this girl on her soapbox.
Y'all buckle down.
I know the question. I'm just saying.
It's the same as that darn cheat meal. I am sorry, but don't schedule cheat meals. Why would you do that to yourself? Like I said, your darling child is going to come up with a cupcake in their hand. They made it school for you. That's your cheat meal. You don't schedule that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Be good to your body all the time, and don't tell yourself, oh, one day it's okay to go gorge on pancakes and waffles and chicken fried steak and all this. No, it's not. I do not agree with cheat meals whatsoever. I don't think it changes your metabolism. I don't think it does anything good for you. Live, and that those moments are going to be there where you are going to have that piece of pizza. Not talking to anybody in particular.
I don't know what you're talking
about. But let it be a moment, and enjoy the moment. Don't let it be something planned. So carb cycling, cheat meals, I just absolutely don't agree with that.
I feel like it sets you up for a false reward system.
Oh, absolutely. Very good point.
Okay, so this on the spot, because a lot of the questions I've asked you, I know your stance on them, but I'm not prepared for this one. Of course, for the listeners, we actually, she had no idea all of the stuff I'm going to ask her. But what are your top 3 pet peeves about someone that comes to you and wants help with nutrition?
Just get me to. Oh, well, the first one that comes to mind is the word starving. It really gets me to the core. When someone comes to me and they haven't eaten for an hour first thing in the morning and they tell me they're starving, I have to remind them that there are people that are really starving. You are not starving. You have a bad habit. And so that's the first one. And in fact, my husband tried to pull that on me 2 days ago. We're taking an evening walk and he's like, I'm starving. And I'm like, no, you're not. You ate a couple of hours ago. You're not starving.
You ain't missing no meals.
No. So that's one that really gets to me. And that's related, of course, to intermittent fasting. The next one is still that we've already talked on it, but when people won't trust me in the fact that they can't, that they have to eat within that window right after working out. And I just so appreciate Terry Crews, who came out recently admitting that he's an intermittent faster. And what I loved about his video was that he works out first thing in the morning and his first meal is at 2 p.m. And that man is lacking no muscle.
Yeah.
So he's true. Once again, now maybe it doesn't work for everybody. Everybody's so different. Everybody's metabolisms are so different. But I know for me, I don't have to eat first thing after I work out. And I think people need to let that go. That if they have to get up early in the morning at 7 o'clock in the morning and then they can't eat till 10 or 11, I think they're going to survive. And I think their body's going to pull the fat instead of the muscle between the workout and their first meal. And there's one more.
Yep. That was only 2.
That was only 2. Let me see.
I totally
yeah, you totally did. But I mean, I spend all day answering questions, but I love to do it. This morning was a gal who was using an app from a very popular bodybuilding site. And it, of course, had her with very, very low, very high carbs, very low fat, and very high protein. And she wants to be in the more in the fitness competitor arena.
Right.
And the thought that these girls that either want to be in that arena or girls that follow those girls and just want to eat like them think that they need to have substantially high protein because they think that more is better. And that's not true. Too much protein is bad for you. I mean, not only can protein convert, you have too much into, it's much more complicated, but to simplify it into carbs, that it can become, your body will treat it like a carb and store it as fat, gluconeogenesis. But they're afraid to put the fat up, and it's bad for the kidneys to have that much protein. So I battle all the time. People are okay now with lower carbs. That's kind of becoming the norm, but they think, okay, low carb, now I need to increase my protein. No, you don't. Your protein needs to stay exactly where it is. And you need to increase your fat. So that's the third one. I battle with people thinking they need so much dang protein. They're so proud to tell me that their protein shake has 35 grams of protein. And I'm like,
that's not good.
It's just really good marketing. It's like the new gluten-free, the new low-fat. It's protein. You need so much protein.
Right. And it's not good for you.
What do you think is the key to getting people to actually start believing that fat doesn't make them fat?
Oh, I am so excited about all of the doctors that are coming out and sharing. So I always recommend that people just not take my word for it, but there's amazing podcasts out there that talk about this kind of thing. And there's documentaries, you want to watch a movie with your family, grab yourself some celery and almond butter, put the popcorn away and watch a documentary. I mean, they're fascinating for one thing, but I think the more you educate yourself by what's out there, read a book, you'll embrace it so much more. Not only embrace it, but learn to become an advocate for it. When you become an advocate for something, you really practice what you preach, because you're telling everybody about this and how amazing it is and what you've learned, how we were wrong, and that dang Ansel Keys, which I know you guys talked about on an earlier podcast, screwed it up for us all. Once they start really learning about it, they'll share and they'll just be a proponent for it. And I think that's the best transition for someone to really embrace a higher fat lifestyle, moderate protein and lower fat.
So protein sources. You have a person that comes to you and is a vegetarian or a vegan.
She's hitting every nerve point with you today.
but not that I'm anti-vegetarian or vegan. As I always say, my daughter is, and my daughter makes up for all the meat that I eat. We balance each other out.
Exactly.
But there's plenty of good protein sources. But again, they're going to get the protein that they need from the choices that they make, mostly from vegetables. And again, I hate to plug it, but something like Shakeology, I mean, you're getting 16 to 18 grams right there, and there's not a whole lot more you need between your to supplement at all between a healthy diet that's vegan or vegetarian with all of the greens that you have. And so I think that one thing that I've always been, I don't know if chastise is the right word for it, but I have a YouTube video of me talking about the vegan and the high fat diet. And people came to me and they said, well, you can be vegan or vegetarian and higher fat. And they're absolutely right. I wasn't clear in my ad, or the way I worded it, that it was a more low fat diet than a vegan diet versus a high fat. And so I would love to work with more vegans and vegetarians because I would love to come up with, a very good system for them when it comes to adding more fat into their diet and having the right amount of protein, because I know that they fear from the media that they're not getting enough protein, but most likely they are, even without, having the foods that they think that for whatever reason they're not eating. It's important that I'd love to work with them, to be honest with you.
Yeah. You're the type that likes a challenge, though.
Yes, I do. Big time. Bring it on.
And one thing that I hate that people overlook is soy is one protein source that a lot of vegans and vegetarians use as their main protein source. And yet, what percent of soy is GMO in our country? Isn't it like 90?
Like 99?
Yeah.
All of it.
Yeah. And I still think that the education of at least the American people for sure on why caring about GMO versus non-GMO is so important. Like, I just don't think people understand the importance of it yet. And when they come up with it's just more expensive to buy that. Well, do you know what it
rightfully so?
Yeah. I mean, the fact that Europe has banned GMO, I mean, like that, why is that not a huge red flag for people?
Yeah.
Not just one country, but countries ban this stuff, and our government doesn't care because it's a big moneymaker.
Yeah, I always say that they're the government's for profit, not people.
Oh, absolutely. I actually just listened to a podcast of Dr. Davis, who his book what is it? Undoctored. I think Undoctored. So he's a physician. He's a cardiologist, and his book is coming out in May. I can't wait to read it. But he talks about essentially you becoming your best doctor, because medicine is to make money nowadays. I mean, he made the point. He was like, the orthopedic surgeon who makes a ton, if you tell him to tell a patient that, well, we need to look at your nutrition, all these things, his pay would go down 90%. Is he going to get that up? I mean, medicine is a business, and and all three of us, I'm the only medical doctor, but all three of us have a huge knowledge bank of nutrition because we have sought after it and we have learned it, and it has nothing to do with what degrees, what letters are behind or not behind our name. And like you said, the more you know, it becomes your calling, your
well, you know what, Lauren, I even everything I learned in college is the complete opposite of what I believe today.
That's so true, right?
I had a nutritionist in there as well, and she just graduated not too long ago, and she's still, the standard American diet, the food plate was still taught, and she knows it doesn't work and wanted to be in this accountability group to learn, more about putting a little fat in your diet. And she's blown away, not only from her own results, but the research and stuff that's out there, that she just assumed she knew the right thing to do because the educational system taught her that. So it's sad.
Well, I mean, granted, it's been over 10 years since I've been in med school, but I guarantee they're still teaching if a person has, heart disease or whatever, that to preach a low fat diet. I guarantee. And low cholesterol. Don't eat the egg white. No. It has nothing to do with nothing.
Yeah.
Eat the whole egg.
Yes. Yes.
There's no nutrition in that egg white.
Yeah, no, it kills me. If anyone that follows me online knows, I'm always telling people, eat the whole egg, please, please. All right. Well, Melissa, I know that we could talk forever. And in fact, I wouldn't be surprised if we might have you on for part 2 at a later date. Cause I know that you will, cause you love me.
I love us.
I do. I love Robert too now. I'm a big Robert fan.
Yay. So, but first of all, let's tell people where they can find you, because, I have no doubt that there is another Lauren who is listening to this podcast, just like I was listening to your podcast a few years ago, and they have fallen in love with who you are and want to follow you. So tell them where all to find you.
I could only be so blessed to find another one of you. But I do have a Facebook Live that I really post heavily about nutrition. And if you just put Fitness Melissa McAllister after the / you'll find that. Instagram is Melissa Made, and Snapchat, which is just a little more the goofy side of Melissa, is Melissa Made Inc. INC after. So Melissa Made INC.
Where can we find your ebooks?
Oh, if you go to themaidediet.com, both of them are there.
Okay. And they're both, I actually, the people that are listening, I actually read your MAID diet when I was in recovery from my knee surgery. And I definitely follow the principles in MAID diet. And I think that the nutrition in that had a lot to do with why I healed so quickly and healed so well, because I was fueling my body with that high grade fuel,
right?
And giving all of my cells the dense nutrients that it needs to heal. And so so the MAID diet, it's both are great ebooks. I highly recommend them for sure. My mom is a huge fan of yours as well. And
met her yet?
Yeah. But I thank you so very much for spending your Good Friday with us.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it greatly. And for those of you that are listening, make sure that you go check her out on all of her different social media platforms, get her book, and then make sure that you follow us at fitzandhealthy.com. What other places do I need to remind them, Cynthia? He's like, what?
Just drew a major blank.
You can follow Cynthia on Instagram at Cynthia.
You can follow me. Nice. You can find me on Snapchat at Cynthia P. And we'll put in the show notes how to spell my name, because I know y'all don't know how to spell it, and it's okay. No. I forgive you.
It gets jacked on a regular basis. You can follow me at Club Fitz Fitness and at Club Fitz on Snapchat. We appreciate all of you guys, your time that you spent with us. Hopefully that this has been content that will help you live a more fit and healthy life. Until next time, much love. We're out. Make sure that you find us on social media. You can find Cynthia on Instagram and Facebook at Cynthia. So that's CINTHANIE, and on Snapchat at Cynthia P. And find me on social media platforms like Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, all at Club Fitz Fitness. Remember, that's FITZ Fitness. And on Snapchat, just at Club Fitz. I appreciate your time listening so much. If you enjoyed this episode of the Fitz and Healthy podcast, can you please go do me a favor and go subscribe at whatever platform that it is that you listen to podcasts. Leave a review. We read every single review, and we appreciate the time that you take to leave your thoughts and opinions. Now, also remember, while I am a medical doctor, the information I provide here is not intended to provide medical advice or a professional diagnosis, opinion, treatment, or services to you or to any other individual. I am providing general information for educational and informational purposes only, and it is not a substitute for medical or professional care. You should not use this information in place of a visit, call, consultation, or the advice of your physician or other healthcare provider. The information I share is not intended to treat, cure, or diagnose any disease or medical condition. If you believe you have a medical emergency, just call 911 immediately or your physician. Now, enough of that medical legal jargon. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I appreciate your time. Now, go live a FITz and healthy life.